Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, it's gonna be a video about my digital art process, kind of a little step-by-step of what I do when I'm doing a digital art piece. Today's piece is going to be of Wednesday Addams from the new Netflix series Wednesday. Before I get started, let me know in the comments if you guys prefer the voiceovers or if you rather just have like music and subtitles or something like that, because I feel like everybody prefers like something different. But I know a lot of people like the voiceovers, so if that's the case, I'll just have to get more comfortable with doing the voiceovers or whatever. But either or, just let me know in the comments. Anyway, so like I said, today's video is going to be kind of like a step-by-step process. Kind of. You're going to see some of the individual steps that I take when doing my illustrations. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my thoughts on the series too. Just a little bit. I'm not going to go as in-depth as I did with my last video. I'm just gonna pretty much say like what I like about this series or how I felt about the series. So let's get into it. So first of all, going into the series, I know nothing of the Addams family. I haven't seen any of the original series or comics or anything like that. I just know vaguely of the characters. You know, kind of like what they typically look like and all that kind of stuff, like, you know, like how Wednesday is pretty much known for like her widow's peak and her dark clothing and all that kind of stuff, and how the whole family in general is known for being like pretty unique or whatever. So yeah, but I will say, even though that's basically like all my knowledge is about the whole Addams family, I would say I really like this series. I feel like they did a really good job, and it was definitely giving Tim Burton, you know, that classic Tim Burton. But I don't feel like that's a bad thing, because I feel like a show like this kind of works for that, you know. The Addams family already kind of goes into that vibe of Tim Burton, so I feel like this works out really well, and I like what they did with the character of Wednesday. I don't know if she's originally kind of like antisocial, kind of, well, I'm not sure if antisocial is the right word for it, but you know, just very to herself, goes with her own way or her own rules, whatever, and doesn't really listen to like what other people might say or think about her. Like I said, I haven't consumed any other Addams family media, so I can't really say if that's the case or not for the original, but I will say I like how they did it here. I feel like they did a really good job with Wednesday's character. And I feel like they did a good job with how they contrasted her character between the other characters that she meets along the way. Like her and Eden, for example, I feel like that contrast was really good, and it kind of also builds upon like the growth that we see Wednesday go throughout the series. And I'm not going to spoil anything for her. I'm not going to spoil anything about this series, so don't be worried about that. This is kind of just my general thoughts about the series, all in all. But yeah, I feel like they did a good job. I like the whole thriller mystery aspect of it. It kind of had me on my, like, a little bit on the edge, because I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting this series to go this way. Because before I watched it, some of my friends were like, you should watch it, it's good. But they didn't tell me how it goes. So I wasn't sure like what the theme of it was going to be, or like what kind of antics they would get into. But yeah, I really like it, and I like how Wednesday basically becomes like an investigator for everything that's going on in the school and with her family in the town, whatever. So I like how they handled that, and I like her character, and I really like how Jenna Ortega plays this character. I feel like she was the perfect fit for this character. Like, whenever she looks at the camera with that look in her, like that look in her eye, like that little side eye, like I feel like she did that so well, and it just made me like the character really well. It made me like the character even more. So yeah, I feel like if you haven't seen the series already, you should watch it. I mean, it's been out for like a little bit now, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna get a season 2, or at least I hope so, because I would definitely watch season 2. I feel like this is one of those shows that, instead of kind of just watching the first season and then not watching anything else, I feel like I would probably watch the season 2, because I would like to know more of the lore of the town and what other like antics and stuff that Wednesday is gonna get into and what else she can discover. So I'm really excited to know more about that, and also just to see the growth between her and all the other characters in the series. So yeah, those are my general thoughts. Let me know what you guys think about the series down below, and what you like about it, and what you think could be improved about it, and whether or not you would watch season 2. Well, anyway, let's get into the actual process of this illustration. So we already skipped through like pretty much everything before this point because I was talking, but I also feel like it wasn't that important because it was just line art, color filling, stuff like that. But here I am actually doing the shadows for the illustration. And one clip that I do not have because I'm not sure what happened to my computer, but I think it was because I was having difficulties with my drawing tablet. So I thought it was recording and it just straight up was not recording, so that is fun. But it is whatever, because I also don't feel like there was much to be missed or whatever. But anyway, this part is just me going into the shadows for the piece. I really wanted to capture that kind of like overcast feel, and kind of like how the right side of her face is in shadow but then the other side is not. But also the fact that it's not like too darkly in shadow. It's just kind of slightly in shadow for lack of better words. But yeah, so you can see me doing that here. At first I had the layer on normal and I was using like a dark purple color, and I still am, but the layer mode is different because I realized you guys couldn't even see what I was doing with that dark purple color. So I eventually picked up on that and I switched the layer, because I usually switch the layer at the end of filling everything in. But I couldn't really do that here because I also unintentionally picked a color that was too dark. I should have leaned for a more brighter purple, but this is almost black. So changing the layer early was kind of necessary. Right now the layer is on overlay, and that kind of just makes the darker color just turn into shadows for whatever color is underneath. And you can do that with overlay, you can do that with multiply, soft light, a lot of the different layer settings in Photoshop will give you like a kind of that look, but it will be slightly different or more intense or whatever. Like multiply makes it really dark, and that's fine if you want that really dark look, but it kind of stays true to whatever color that you use in your brush. but it still works to darken the colors underneath. But it's a little tricky, so I personally do not really like using multiply like that. I use multiply in other ways, but here right now it is in overlay, and I do eventually switch out of overlay because I felt like it was making the shadow area of her face too intense. It was, I don't know, like, as you can see when I was doing her face, it just looked very orange and very oversaturated, and that's not the look that I was going for. And even if I was to have lowered the opacity, it still wasn't quite the look that I was going for. So after I do everything, I do eventually switch the layer setting yet again, and I think I switch it to soft light. I'm not 100% sure because I can't really see in this footage because I think it goes by way too fast, but I'm pretty sure I end up switching it to soft light before I move on to the next step. And then here I am doing the hair, which was giving me some difficulties. I really liked the brush that I was using. I have no idea what this brush is called. It's one of the sample brushes in Photoshop. I don't really use any custom brushes like that unless I need like a certain type of brush for whatever illustration I'm doing. Then I will go Google some free brushes or whatever. But yeah, so I was kind of adding like the gradient and the texture to her hair, and it was a little tricky, but I got it eventually. So as you can see here, the layer setting is already changed for the shadow layer, and now the shadows actually look like shadows and not just overly saturated areas of the illustration. So, and now I have moved on to the highlighting process. So I kind of wanted to capture that cool light that's in the reference photo, so I was using like a light blue to kind of do the highlights in the piece, and just, you know, highlighting the high points and also highlighting where I felt was necessary. I was pretty much taking like some creative liberties here and there. I kind of added highlights where you can't really see in the image, but I felt like it would help if I added them to my illustration. And it's also very subtle in some areas, but I felt like it added to it anyway. I feel like small details are necessary, even if it's not that visible to the naked eye, it helps. So yeah, adding the highlights, adding some extra details going in, adding things that I feel like I missed when I was doing the base color or doing my line art. And I feel like it just helps the illustration pop a lot, and it adds some sense of depth to the illustration. And after I add all the highlights, I do go over with another layer that I think I eventually set it to soft light, but basically this layer I just selected the whole illustration and I filled it in with like a mid-tone purple color, and I switched the layer setting to soft light, and that kind of just gave the whole illustration like a more cool color profile, because I felt like it was leading very much towards warm, and it looked good, but it wasn't necessarily giving the vibe that I was going for, because I wasn't trying to stay too true to the reference. I was still trying to take like some creative liberties here, like I'm doing the hair, I feel like I put a bit more highlights or put more emphasis in the highlights than what's really in the reference photo, stuff like that. But yeah, you'll see it eventually that I do this layer overlay, and it kind of pushed the color palette into the warmer side, and I feel like that just helped with the illustration, but also helped with the vibe of Wednesday, because, you know, she's kind of dark and vampy, so it helps. And yeah, right here you can see I'm doing it really quickly. Originally it was on multiply and I lowered the opacity, but I still felt like it was dark and it was like tuning out the colors too much. So I even tried to like go in and erase some things, but it wasn't really like brightening the areas. It was just bringing some of that warm color from underneath through. So it didn't really work the way that I wanted to. So I switched it to overlay and then I switched it to soft light. And I was like playing with the two and trying to figure out like what I liked or whatever, but I eventually stick with soft light, and I'm pretty sure even in the final illustration I do tone down the opacity just a little bit. I think to like 90% or so, whatever. And then here I duplicated my line art layer, moved it underneath like all the color layers, and then I went to the blending settings, set a stroke so that there could be an outline over the whole image to kind of give it that sticker vibe, because that's what I was going for. It was kind of like a sticker vibe, so maybe eventually I could print stickers of this or something, but I wanted to have that border over it, and that's kind of an easy way to have that border over it is to duplicate your line art and then put a stroke in the blending settings on that, so that you don't ruin your original line art, but then also the stroke can be nice and clean too, because usually when you do line art you're trying to get it to be nice and clean. So yeah, and then now we're reaching the finals of this illustration. And I did try to change some of the line art color, but I ended up not liking it, so I deleted it and I left it as is. And then here I am adding text, just chose whatever random font I felt like fit best for the vibe of the character and the illustration. Fix that up, whatever, and we are done. And that is the final illustration. I want to thank y'all for tuning in, and if you watch to the end, you are goated. So thank you for watching to the end. If you want to see the final illustration, it will be up on my Instagram. The link will be in the bio, and I'll probably also link my TikTok. But yeah, I want to thank y'all for watching, and I'll see y'all in my next video. Bye.